The transport ship shook as it entered the atmosphere of Kethos 7. Lieutenant Una Park held onto her seat and watched the frozen moon grow larger through the small window. Ice covered everything below. Mountains of white and gray stretched in every direction. Somewhere down there, hidden in the snow, was the Valhari Military Academy. Una had read the files 100 times during her journey. The Valhari were a proud species. They looked like wolves that walked on 2 legs. They stood taller than humans, with thick fur, sharp claws, and teeth that could bite through metal. For thousands of years, they had been known as some of the best warriors in the galaxy. Their soldiers feared nothing. Their pack structure was absolute. Every Valhari knew their place, from the lowest pup to the highest elder. And now they had asked for a human trainer. Una still did not fully understand why. The message from the Galactic Coalition had been simple. The Valhari had watched humans fight during the border wars. They had seen things they could not explain. Humans were small, weak, and slow compared to most species. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. Yet somehow, human soldiers kept winning battles they should have lost. The Valhari wanted to know the secret. The ship landed with a heavy thud. Cold air rushed in when the doors opened. Una pulled her thermal jacket tighter and stepped out onto the landing pad. Snow crunched under her boots. Her breath came out in white clouds. A group of Valhari waited for her. They stood in perfect formation, their golden eyes watching her without blinking. Their fur was thick and gray, made for this frozen world. Next to them, Una felt very small and very pink. One Valhari stepped forward. He was massive, even by their standards. Scars crossed his muzzle, and his left ear was torn. When he spoke, his voice was deep like thunder rolling across mountains. "I am Pack Leader Ron. You are the human they sent." It was not a question. Una nodded. "Lieutenant Una Park, thank you for having me." Ron's eyes moved over her slowly. She could tell he was measuring her, judging her, finding her lacking. His nose twitched once. "You are smaller than I expected," he said. "Come, the matriarch wishes to see you." He turned and walked away without waiting. The other Valhari followed. Una had to move quickly to keep up with her long steps. The academy was built into the side of a mountain. Great halls of stone and ice stretched deep underground. Valhari warriors moved through the corridors, their claws clicking against the floor. Every single one of them stopped to stare at Una as she passed. She heard whispers in their growling language. She did not need a translator to know they were not saying kind things. The matriarch's chamber was at the heart of the academy. It was a vast room with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Fires burned in great pits along the walls, casting dancing light across everything. Elder Matriarch Vesa sat on a raised platform at the far end. She was old, her muzzle gray with age, but her eyes were sharp and clear. She watched Una approach with an expression that gave nothing away. "So," Vesa said, "this is the human warrior." Una bowed her head in respect. "Elder Matriarch, I am honored to be here. Are you?" Vesa's ears twitched. "My warriors do not want you here. They think it is an insult. A furless, clawless creature sent to teach them how to fight." She leaned forward. "Tell me, human, what can you possibly teach the Valhari?" Una had expected this question. She had prepared many answers. But standing here, surrounded by beings who could kill her with one swipe of their claws, all those prepared words felt empty. "I do not know yet," she said honestly, "but I am willing to learn what you need." Vesa stared at her for a long moment. Then she made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Honest, at least." "Very well. You will begin tomorrow. Pack Leader Ron will oversee your work. Do not disappoint us, human." That night, Una lay in her small quarters and listened to the wind howl outside. The room was cold, despite the heating system. She pulled her blankets tighter and thought about what waited for her tomorrow. She had trained soldiers before. She had fought in wars that should have killed her. She had survived things that still gave her nightmares. But this felt different. These were not her people. This was not her world. She was alone in every way that mattered. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, it brought no rest. Morning arrived with a sharp knock on her door. Yuna dressed quickly and followed a young Velhari to the training grounds. It was an open area carved into the mountain, protected from the worst of the wind, but still bitterly cold. Dozens of Velhari waited there, standing in perfect rows. And at the edge of the field, separated from the adults, was a group of smaller figures. The cubs. Young Velhari, not yet fully grown, their fur still soft and their eyes still bright with curiosity. They stood in their own formation, trying hard to look as serious as the adults. Pack leader Ron stood at the center of the field. He did not greet Yuna. He simply gestured for her to take her place. Yuna walked forward. She could feel every eye on her. The adults looked at her with doubt and disapproval. The cubs looked at her with something else, something she could not quite name. She reached the center of the field and stopped. For a moment, everything was silent except for the wind. Then something happened that no one expected. One of the cubs broke formation. A small one, the run of the group, with fur that was more brown than gray. He bounded across the field toward Yuna, his tail wagging despite everything he had been taught. Then another cub followed, and another, and another. Within seconds, Yuna was surrounded by young Velhari. They circled her, sniffing at her clothes, her hands, her hair. Their tails wagged. Their ears perked forward. One of them, a female with a slight limp in her back leg, pressed her nose against Yuna's palm. The adult Velhari stood frozen in shock. This had never happened before. Cubs did not break formation. Cubs did not disobey. It was against everything they had been taught since birth. Ron's voice cracked across the field like a whip. Cubs, return to your positions. Now, the young Velhari flinched at his tone. They began to pull away, their tails drooping, their ears flattening in shame. But Yuna did something that shocked everyone even more. She knelt down in the snow. She made herself small, bringing her eyes level with theirs. And she smiled. Hello, she said softly. It is nice to meet you. The cubs stopped retreating. They looked at her, then at the angry adults, then back at her. The small run crept closer again, drawn by something he did not understand. Yuna reached out slowly and touched the top of his head, right between his ears. In the Velhari culture, such a touch was reserved for pack mothers and their young. It was intimate. It was sacred. A stranger should never do such a thing. But the cub did not pull away. Instead, he closed his eyes and leaned into her hand. On the edge of the field, pack leader Ron watched with growing unease. He had expected many things from this human. He had expected weakness, foolishness, failure. He had not expected this. The incident with the cubs spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. By evening, every Velhari in the mountain knew what had happened. The whispers grew louder. The stares grew harder. And Elder Matriarch Vesa called an emergency meeting of the pack leaders. Yuna was not invited to that meeting, but she heard about it later. Ron had demanded answers. How could cubs trained from birth to obey break formation so easily? What strange power did this human possess? Was she a threat to the pack structure itself? Vesa had listened to all of it. Then she had given her judgment. The human would continue her work. The cubs would be watched closely. If anything else unusual happened, they would reconsider. It was not a victory for Yuna. It was simply permission to keep trying. The days that followed were difficult. The adult warriors wanted nothing to do with her lessons. When she demonstrated fighting techniques, they laughed. When she explained human military tactics, they yawned. When she tried to show them how humans use teamwork to defeat stronger enemies, they called it the strategy of cowards. Ron was the worst of them. He attended every session with his arms crossed and his eyes full of contempt. He never said anything directly to Yuna, but she heard the things he said to others: weak, soft, useless, a waste of time. But the cubs were different. They could not openly disobey their training, but they found small ways to be near her. After official sessions ended, a few would linger at the edge of the field, watching her from a distance. When she walked through the halls, she sometimes found young eyes peering at her from around corners. 3 cubs in particular seemed drawn to her. The first was Kale, the small runt who had broken formation that first day. He was the smallest of his age group, with thin legs and a coat that never seemed to grow thick enough for the cold. The other cubs picked on him constantly. The adults ignored him completely. In Velhari culture, the weak were expected to either grow strong or disappear. Kale was disappearing. The second was Suri, the female with the damaged leg. A training accident had hurt her when she was very young. The injury had healed wrong, leaving her with a permanent limp. The healers had said she would never be a true warrior. Her parents had stopped looking at her with pride. Now she trained twice as hard as anyone else, trying to prove them wrong, but the other cubs still called her broken leg behind her back. The third was Torn, the largest cub in the academy. He was bigger than some adults already, with powerful shoulders and claws that could leave deep marks in stone. Everyone expected him to become a great warrior. There was just one problem. Torn hated fighting. He was gentle by nature, more interested in helping than hurting. In Velhari society, this was considered shameful. His father, a decorated war hero, could barely look at him. Yuna noticed all 3 of them. She noticed the way Kale flinched when bigger cubs walked past. She noticed the way Suri worked herself to exhaustion every single day. She noticed the way Torn held back during combat drills, pulling his strikes so he would not hurt his partners. She noticed because she had seen such things before. On Earth, in herself. 2 weeks after her arrival, Yuna made a decision. After the official evening meal, when most of the academy was settling down for rest, she went to a small training room at the edge of the complex. It was rarely used, far from the main halls, and mostly forgotten. She was not surprised when Kale appeared at the door an hour later, or when Suri limped in behind him, or when Torn ducked his head to fit through the entrance. They stood there, uncertain, waiting to be sent away. Yuna smiled at them. "I was hoping you would come." That first night, she did not teach them fighting. She did not run drills or bark commands. Instead, she asked them questions. Simple things. What did they like? What did they dream about? What made them happy? The cubs did not know how to answer at first. No one had ever asked them such things. Warriors did not talk about feelings. Warriors did not have dreams except for victory in battle. Warriors were not supposed to want happiness, only honor. But slowly, carefully, they began to speak. Kale liked to watch the stars through the observation windows. He knew the names of all the constellations visible from Ketho 7. He dreamed of traveling to other worlds someday, seeing places where the sun was warm and the air did not freeze in your lungs. Suri wanted to prove everyone wrong. She wanted to stand on a battlefield and show them that a damaged leg did not mean a damaged spirit. But more than that, she wanted someone, just one person, to look at her and see strength instead of weakness. Torn did not want to hurt anyone. He knew this made him strange. He knew it disappointed his father. But he could not change what he felt. He wanted to protect things, not destroy them. He wanted to build, not break. Yuna listened to all of it, and when they were done, she told them something that changed everything. "You are not wrong," she said. "You are not broken. You are not weak. You are exactly who you are supposed to be." The cubs stared at her like she had spoken in a foreign language. "But the pack says," Kale started. "The pack is not always right," Yuna said gently. "Where I come from, we have learned that the ones who seem weakest often become the strongest. The ones who are different are the ones who change the world. It just takes time. And someone who believes in them." She looked at each of them in turn. "I believe in you." Suri made a small sound. It might have been a laugh or a sob or something in between. Torn's eyes went wet, though he tried to hide it. Kale just stared at Yuna like she was the first ray of sunlight after a long winter. After that night, the secret meetings continued. Yuna taught the cubs her way. Not just fighting techniques, but how to think, how to adapt, how to use every advantage they had. She showed Kale that being small meant being fast and hard to catch. She showed Suri that her damaged leg had taught her balance and awareness that others lacked. She showed Torn that his gentle nature could protect others instead of just holding him back. She taught them something else too, something the Volhari had no word for. She taught them hope. But secrets do not stay secret forever. Not in a place like the Academy, where every shadow had eyes and every wall had ears. One evening, pack leader Ron followed the cubs to their hidden training room. He stood in the doorway and watched as Yuna helped Kale practice a movement that used his small size as a weapon. His growl made everyone freeze. "So," Ron said, his voice like ice, "this is what you do. You sneak around in the dark. You fill our young ones' heads with human weakness. You turn them against their own people." Yuna stood up slowly. She put herself between Ron and the cubs without even thinking about it. "I am not turning them against anyone. I am helping them." "Helping them?" Ron stepped closer. He was so much bigger than her. His claws clicked against the floor. "You are teaching them to be soft. You are teaching them that feelings matter more than strength. In the real world, that will get them killed." "In the real world," Yuna said quietly, "caring about each other is what keeps us alive." Ron laughed. It was not a kind sound. "You truly believe that? Your compassion is a disease, human, and I will not let you spread it to our cubs." He reached past her and grabbed Kale by the arm. The small cub yelped in pain. Something changed in Yuna's eyes. "Let him go," she said. Her voice was different now, harder, colder. Ron paused. For just a moment, something flickered across his face. It might have been surprise. It might have been doubt. But then he smiled, showing all his teeth. "Well, what, human? What will you do?" Yuna met his gaze without flinching. "Let him go, and I will show you." The silence stretched between them like a wire about to snap. Finally, Ron released Kale. The cub scrambled back to hide behind Suri and Torn. "Very well," Ron said. "Tomorrow. The main training ground. In front of everyone." His smile grew wider. "Show me what human compassion is worth in a fight." He turned and walked away into the darkness. Behind him, Yuna stood very still. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her eyes were calm. She had made a promise. Now she would have to keep it. The cubs gathered around her, their fear obvious. "He will hurt you," Suri whispered. "He has killed enemies in single combat. He is the strongest warrior in the Academy." Yuna looked down at them, at Kale's worried face, at Suri's trembling hands, at Torn's clenched fists. "Maybe," she said softly, "but some things are worth getting hurt for." Word of the challenge spread through the Academy before sunrise. By the time the morning meal ended, every Valhari in the mountain knew what was about to happen. The human had challenged pack leader Ron, or Ron had challenged the human. The details changed depending on who told the story, but the result was the same. There would be blood on the training ground today. Yun ate her breakfast alone in her quarters. She was not hungry, but she forced herself to finish everything. She would need the energy. She stretched carefully, warming muscles that felt tight with tension. She checked her simple training clothes 3 times, making sure nothing would catch or tear. She did not pray. Humans had many gods, but Yuna had never been sure which one listened. Instead, she simply sat in silence for a few minutes, breathing slowly, letting her mind grow calm and empty. When she finally walked out onto the training ground, the entire academy was waiting. They lined the edges of the field. Hundreds of Velhari standing shoulder to shoulder. Adults and cubs together, though the young ones were kept to the back. Their golden eyes followed Yuna as she walked to the center of the open space. The wind had died down today, but the cold was still bitter enough to make her skin sting. Pack leader Ron was already waiting. He had removed his uniform jacket, revealing the thick muscles beneath his fur. Old scars crisscrossed his chest and arms, each one a story of battle survived. He rolled his massive shoulders and flexed his claws. He looked at Yuna like she was already dead. Elder Matriarch Vesa sat on a raised platform at the edge of the field. Her face showed nothing, but her eyes were sharp and watchful. Beside her sat other pack leaders and senior warriors, all curious to see what would happen. Ron spoke first, his voice carrying across the silent field. "This is your last chance, human. Apologize for what you have done. Promise to stop corrupting our cubs. Walk away now, and I will let you leave with your bones unbroken." Yuna walked closer. She stopped 3 meters from him and met his eyes. "No." A murmur ran through the crowd. Ron's ears flattened. "Then you are a fool." He attacked without warning. One moment he was standing still. The next he was moving, crossing the distance between them faster than most eyes could follow. His claws swept toward Yuna's throat. She was not there. Yuna had dropped low and rolled to the side. Ron's claws cut through empty air. Before he could recover, she was behind him, striking the back of his knee with her heel. It was not a hard blow, but it was precise. His leg buckled for just a moment. Ron spun around with a snarl. He had not expected her to move so quickly. The watching Velhari were silent now. Something was happening that they did not understand. Ron attacked again. This time, he used both arms, slashing in wide arcs that left no room to dodge. Yuna ducked the first strike and took the second on her forearm guard, letting the impact push her backward rather than fighting it. She stumbled, almost fell, but turned the fall into a backward roll that put distance between them. "You run like prey," Ron growled. "Stand and fight like a warrior." "No," Yuna said again. She was breathing hard, but her voice was steady. "I fight like a human." Ron charged. Yuna waited until the last possible moment, then stepped to the side and let him rush past. As he passed, she struck his ribs with her elbow. Again, the blow was not powerful, but it was perfectly placed, hitting a spot where the bones came together. Ron grunted in pain. He turned and swung backhanded, his arms sweeping low. Yuna jumped over it and kicked off his shoulder, using him as a springboard to flip backward and land on her feet. The cubs at the edge of the field leaned forward, their eyes wide. Ron was getting angry now. His attacks became faster, harder, less controlled. He stopped trying to catch her and started trying to crush her. His fist slammed into the ground where she had been standing moments before, leaving craters in the frozen earth. Yuna kept moving. She never stood still for more than a heartbeat. Every time Ron attacked, she was already gone, sliding under his arms, rolling behind his legs, ducking around his strikes. She left small wounds as she passed. A cut on his forearm. A strike to his kidney. A kick to his ankle that made him stumble. None of the wounds were serious, but they were adding up. 5 minutes passed. Then 8. Then 10. The watching Velhari began to whisper among themselves. They had never seen anything like this. Ron was one of their greatest warriors. He had ended fights in seconds. He had killed enemies with single blows. Yet this small, soft, clawless human was still standing, and she was talking. "Your left shoulder drops before you swing," Yuna said, dancing away from another strike. "You telegraph your attacks." Anyone watching carefully could see them coming. Ron roared and lunged at her. "Your anger makes you sloppy," Yuna continued, slipping past him. "You are fighting with your pride, not your head. That is a weakness." Another missed strike. Another small wound on Ron's arm. "This is what I teach," Yuna said. "Not how to be the strongest, not how to have the sharpest claws, but how to think, how to watch, how to use everything you have, including your weaknesses." Ron finally managed to catch her. His hand closed around her arm, and he yanked her toward him, his other hand raised for a killing strike. Yuna did not try to break free. Instead, she went limp, letting her weight pull her down. Ron, expecting resistance, stumbled forward. Yuna used his own grip to swing herself up, wrapping her legs around his arm and twisting her whole body. The joint lock forced Ron to his knees or risk having his elbow shattered. For one moment, they were frozen like that. The massive wolf creature on his knees, the small human wrapped around his arm, both of them breathing hard. "Do you yield?" Yuna asked. Ron's answer was a growl of pure rage. He stood up, lifting Yuna with him, and slammed her into the ground. The impact drove the air from her lungs. Stars exploded across her vision. Before she could move, Ron was on top of her, his full weight pressing down, his hand around her throat. "You think your tricks make you strong?" He snarled. His claws pricked her skin, drawing tiny drops of blood. "You think talking makes you a warrior? This is strength, human. This is what matters in the end. The weak die. The strong survive. That is the only truth." Yuna could not breathe. Her vision was starting to darken at the edges. But she did not look away from his eyes. "Then kill me," she whispered. Ron hesitated. "If strength is all that matters," Yuna continued, her voice barely audible, "then kill me. Prove yourself right. Show the cubs that compassion is weakness. Show them that the only way to survive is to become a monster." Her eyes flickered to the edge of the field, where Kale, Suri, and Torn stood watching with terror on their faces. "Show them," Yuna said, "what they have to become." Ron's hand tightened around her throat. His claws dug deeper. One push, one squeeze, and it would be over. The moment stretched into eternity. Then, slowly, Ron's grip loosened. He pulled his hand back. He stood up and stepped away, leaving Yuna gasping on the frozen ground. 11 minutes, he said quietly. His voice had changed. The rage was gone, replaced by something else. Something that might have been respect. "You lasted 11 minutes against me. No outsider has ever done that." He looked down at his arms, at the dozen small wounds that covered them. He looked at his shoulder, which was already starting to bruise. He looked at Yuna, who was slowly pushing herself to her feet, blood trickling from her throat, one arm hanging at a bad angle. "You did not fight to win," Ron said. "You knew you could not beat me. You fought to prove a point." Yuna nodded. Speaking hurt too much. Ron turned to face the crowd. His eyes found the cubs, still frozen at the edge of the field. And then something happened that no one expected. Pack leader Ron, the greatest warrior in the academy, bowed his head to the human. "I was wrong," he said. His voice carried across the silent field. "I called her weak. I called her soft. but she is neither. He looked back at Yuna. She is a warrior. A different kind of warrior, but a warrior nonetheless. From the back of the crowd, a sound rose. It was Kale, the small runt, lifting his head and letting out a long howl. The Valhari sound of respect given to those who had proved themselves in battle. Suri joined him. Then Torn. Then, one by one, the other cubs. The sound grew until it echoed off the mountains, until it filled the sky. Yuna stood in the center of the field, bloody and broken, and listened to the cubs sing for her Dot. It was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. 3 months passed after the fight with Ron. Things changed at the academy, slowly at first, then faster. The adult warriors still did not fully accept Yuna's methods, but they no longer mocked them openly. Some even started attending her sessions, standing at the back, watching with careful eyes. Ron became something unexpected. Not quite a friend, but no longer an enemy. He started assigning his own students to train with Yuna, curious to see what they might learn. When other pack leaders complained about the humans' influence, Ron defended her. "I fought her," he would say. "I know what she is." But the biggest change was with the cubs. Yuna's secret training sessions were no longer secret. Elder Matriarch Vesa had given official permission for her to teach the young ones. Now, every evening, a group of cubs gathered in the small training room. They learned human fighting techniques. They learned tactical thinking. They learned to work together, to trust each other, to protect each other. Most importantly, they learned that being different was not a weakness. Kale had grown stronger. He was still small, but he moved like water now, impossible to catch, impossible to predict. He had won 3 sparring matches against bigger cubs, using speed and cleverness instead of brute strength. Suri had stopped trying to hide her limp. Instead, she had learned to use it to make enemies underestimate her, to strike from angles they never expected. Her determination had become something fierce and beautiful. Torn had found his place. He became the protector of the younger cubs, standing between them and any threat. His gentle nature, once considered shameful, had become a source of strength. The little ones trusted him completely. It was a cold night in the 4th month when everything changed. Yuna was asleep in her quarters when the first explosion shook the mountain. She was on her feet before her eyes were fully open, pulling on clothes and boots in the darkness. Alarms screamed through the corridors. Red emergency lights flickered to life. She ran into the hallway and nearly collided with Ron. His fur was standing on end, his eyes wide with alarm. "Skath Collective," he growled. "They are attacking the academy." Yuna knew about the Skath, insectoid creatures, cold and cruel, who collected other species for experiments. They had been enemies of the Volhari for centuries. "How many?" she asked. "At least 200. Maybe more. They hit the main entrance first, drew our warriors there. But there is a second force." Ron's voice dropped. "They are heading for the cub dormitory." Yuna's blood turned to ice. She ran before Ron could stop her. Down corridors, through halls, following paths she had memorized weeks ago. Behind her, she could hear Ron shouting orders, trying to organize a response. But the main Valhari force was engaged at the front entrance. The cubs were unprotected. The cub dormitory was on the eastern side of the mountain, connected to the main complex by a single long corridor. When Yuna reached that corridor, she found chaos. A small group of adult Valhari were fighting desperately against a wave of Skath warriors. The insectoid creatures were horrifying, with sharp limbs and mandibles that dripped venom. The Valhari were losing. Yuna did not hesitate. She grabbed the weapon from a fallen warrior and joined the fight. The Skath turned toward her, surprised by the sudden attack from behind. She cut down 2 of them before they could react. But there were too many. The last Valhari defenders fell. Now it was just Una, standing alone in the corridor, with at least 30 Skath between her and the cubs. She could hear them behind the sealed dormitory doors. Young voices crying, calling for help. "Come on then," Una said to the Skath. "Come on." They came. The next 47 minutes became legend. Una fought with everything she had. She used the narrow corridor to her advantage, forcing the Skath to come at her in small numbers. She broke weapons and grabbed new ones. She threw things, stabbed things, kicked things. When she ran out of weapons, she used her hands. When her hands were too bloody to grip, she used her elbows and knees. The Skath had never faced anything like her. Humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to break easily, give up quickly. But this human would not stop. They cut her, stabbed her, burned her with venom. She kept fighting. They broke her arm. She kept fighting. They knocked her down again and again. She got back up every single time. Behind the sealed doors, the cubs listened to the sounds of battle. They heard the humans scream in pain and rage. They heard Skath warriors die. And they heard Una's voice calling out to them between strikes. "Stay there. Stay hidden. I will not let them reach you. I promise. I promise." Inside the dormitory, Kale stood frozen. He was terrified. Every instinct told him to hide, to curl up in a corner and wait for the adults to save them. That was what cubs were supposed to do. But the human was out there alone. The human who had believed in him when no one else did. "We have to help her," Kale said. The other cubs stared at him like he was insane. "She is dying for us," Suri said. Her voice shook, but her eyes were hard. "We cannot just hide." Torn stepped forward. He was the biggest, the strongest. If anyone could help, it was him. "What do we do?" he asked. Kale thought fast. He remembered everything Una had taught them. Use what you have. Work together. Protect each other. "Suri, you take the younger cubs deeper into the dormitory. Hide them in the storage rooms. Torn, help me open the back ventilation shaft. There's another way into the corridor." They moved without argument. Suri gathered the youngest cubs and led them away, her voice calm and steady despite her fear. Torn ripped the ventilation cover off the wall with his claws. Kale squeezed into the shaft. It was tight, barely big enough for him, but that was the point. His small size, the thing that had made him weak, was now his greatest advantage. He crawled through the darkness toward the sounds of fighting. In the corridor, Una was failing. She had killed so many Skath, but more kept coming. Her body was covered in wounds. One of her eyes was swollen shut. She could barely lift her arms. A Skath warrior knocked her to the ground. She tried to get up. Her legs would not obey. The creature raised its blade. Behind it, a ventilation grate crashed open. Kale dropped from the ceiling onto the Skath's back, sinking his small claws into its neck. The creature screamed and spun around, trying to throw him off. Kale held on with everything he had. More sounds from behind. Torn burst through a side door, but Kale had unlocked from inside the vents. The big cub slammed into the Skath line like a battering ram, scattering them. Suri appeared from another direction. She had not hidden like she was supposed to. Instead, she had led the younger cubs to safety and come back. Her damaged leg dragged behind her, but she moved fast, striking at every Skath she could reach. They were not trained soldiers. They were cubs, but they fought like their lives depended on it, because the life of their human depended on it. Una watched through blurred vision as her students, her cubs, her pack fought to save her. Pride and terror mixed in her chest. "No," she tried to say. "Go back, hide." But they did not listen. They never had. The battle turned. Kale kept opening doors and vents, letting Torn attack from unexpected directions. Suri kept the younger cubs safe, while still striking at any Skath that got too close. And Yuna, somehow, found the strength to stand again. She fought beside them, together, when reinforcements finally arrived, led by Ron himself. They found a corridor filled with dead Skath. They found cubs standing guard over doorways, their fur matted with blood that was not all their own. They found the human collapsed against the wall, barely conscious, with 12 young Velhari pressed against her like she was the center of their universe. Ron stood in silence for a long moment. Then he knelt beside Yuna. "How many?" he asked quietly. Yuna opened her one good eye. Her voice was a whisper. "All of them. I saved all of them." And then she passed out. The cubs did not leave her side. When the healers came to take her to the medical bay, Kale, Suri, and Torn followed. When the doctors said only family could stay, the cubs refused to leave. "She is family," Torn said. His voice left no room for argument. The doctors looked at Ron. Ron looked at the cubs. Then he nodded. "Let them stay," he said. "They have earned that right." And so the cubs kept their vigil, watching over the small, broken human who had thrown herself into death for their sake, who had kept her promise, who had proven that compassion was not weakness after all. Yuna spent 6 weeks in the medical bay. The Velhari healers had never worked on a human before, but they learned quickly. They set her broken bones, closed her wounds, fought the venom that burned through her blood. 3 times she nearly died. 3 times she came back. The cubs visited every day. They brought her food she could not eat and gifts she did not need. They told her stories about training, about the other cubs, about the small moments of life in the academy. They fell asleep beside her bed and had to be carried back to the dormitory by tired adults. Ron came too, though he never stayed long. He would stand in the doorway, watching Yuna sleep, his expression unreadable. Sometimes he spoke to the healers. Sometimes he just stood there in silence. Elder Matriarch Vesa visited once, near the end of Yuna's recovery. She came alone, without guards or attendants, and sat beside the bed while Yuna struggled to sit up. "Do not strain yourself," Vesa said. "I am not here for ceremony." Yuna relaxed back against her pillows. Her body still ached everywhere. The healer said she would carry scars for the rest of her life. She found that she did not mind. "Why are you here?" Yuna asked. Vesa was quiet for a long moment. Her old eyes studied Yuna's face, searching for something. "I have ruled the Volhari for 80 years, Vesa finally said. "I have seen wars and plagues and disasters. I have watched our people face threats that should have destroyed us. But I have never seen anything like what you did." Yuna shook her head slightly. "I just did what anyone would do." "No." Vesa's voice was firm. "That is exactly what makes you different. You truly believe that. You believe that anyone would throw themselves into death for children that were not their own, for a species that had mocked them and doubted them and treated them as lesser." The old matriarch leaned forward. "Why did you do it, human? Tell me the truth. They were not your young, not your pack, not your people. Why did you nearly die for them?" Yuna thought about the question. She thought about Kale, so small and so afraid, who had dropped from the ceiling to save her. She thought about Suri, fighting with a damaged leg that everyone said made her worthless. She thought about Gentle Torn, who had found the courage to charge into battle. Because they were scared, Yuna said simply. Because they were small. That was enough. Vesa stared at her. The silence stretched between them. "We have studied humans for decades," Vesa finally said. "Your wars, your weapons, your expansion across the stars. We thought we understood your danger. We believed it came from your violence, your aggression, your willingness to fight anyone over anything." She shook her head slowly. We were wrong. Your danger is not your violence. Vesa gestured toward the window. Outside, in the courtyard below, cubs were playing in the snow. Yuna could see Kale and Suri and Torn among them, running and laughing and tackling each other. But something was different. The strict pack hierarchy that had always separated them was gone. Strong and weak played together. Different groups mixed freely. Your danger is this, Vesa said. You make others love you. You make them want to fight beside you. You do not conquer species. You adopt them. You find the ones who are lost and broken, and you show them that they matter. And they follow you forever after. Yuna did not know what to say. The cubs have changed, Vesa continued. They refuse to return to the old ways. They demand your methods be taught. They speak of teamwork and compassion and protecting each other, things that should make them weak. She paused. But they are not weak. They are stronger than any cubs we have trained before. The old matriarch stood slowly. You have done something to my people, human. I do not fully understand it yet, but I believe, in time, we will be grateful for it. She left without another word. 4 more weeks passed. Yuna healed. She returned to teaching, though the healers forced her to take it slowly at first. The academy felt different now. The adults who had once ignored her nodded in respect when she passed. The cubs who had once watched from shadows now crowded around her openly, eager for her lessons. But she knew it could not last. The message came on a cold morning in late winter. Official orders from the Galactic Coalition. 17 other species had requested Yuna as an instructor. Her success with the Velhari had spread across the galaxy. She was needed elsewhere. She was being reassigned. Yun read the message 3 times. Then she sat down heavily and stared at the wall. The news spread through the academy within hours. When Yuna walked to the evening meal, she found Kale waiting for her outside the dining hall. His ears were flat against his head. His tail hung low. You are leaving, he said. It was not a question. Yuna nodded. I have to. There are others who need help. But we need you, Kale said. His voice cracked. I need you. Yuna knelt down so she was at his eye level. She reached out and touched the top of his head, right between his ears, the way she had on that very first day. You do not need me, she said gently. You never did. Everything I taught you, everything you learned, that was always inside you. I just helped you see it. Kale's eyes were wet. I was nothing before you came. No, Yuna said firmly. You were everything. You were kind and curious and brave. You just needed someone to believe in you. She smiled. Now you can be that person for others. The farewell ceremony was held 3 days later. The entire academy gathered in the Great Hall. Hundreds of Velhari, from the oldest elders to the youngest cubs, stood in rows that filled the massive space. Torches burned along the walls, casting warm light across gray fur and golden eyes. Yuna stood at the center, wearing her simple human clothes. Her bags were already packed, her transport waiting on the landing pad above. Elder Matriarch Vesa stepped forward. Her voice carried through the hall. Today we say goodbye to one who came to us as a stranger. She was small where we are large, soft where we are hard, different from us in every way that can be measured. Vesa looked at Yuna, but she taught us something we had forgotten. Strength is not only in claws and teeth. It lives in the heart that refuses to give up, in the hand that reaches out to help, in the voice that says, you matter, to those who have been told they do not. She turned to the assembled Velhari. This human fought for our cubs when she had nothing to gain. She bled for them. She nearly died for them. Not because they were her pack or her blood, but simply because they needed her. The hall was completely silent. That, Vesa said, is a kind of strength the Velhari had lost. She helped us find it again. The matriarch stepped back. Ron stepped forward. His face was hard to read, but Una thought she saw something soft in his eyes. "The Cubs wish to give you something," he said. "A ritual that has never been offered to an outsider in all our history." Kale, Suri, and Torn walked forward from the crowd. They moved together in perfect step, like a pack. When they reached Una, they stopped and stood in a half-circle around her. Kale spoke first. "You found me when I was lost. You showed me that small does not mean weak." Suri spoke next. "You saw strength where others saw damage. You taught me that my leg is not my limit." Torn spoke last. "You gave me permission to be gentle. You showed me that protection is as noble as destruction." Together, they leaned forward. They pressed their foreheads against hers, one at a time. It was a simple gesture, but Una felt the weight of it. She had read about this ritual in her studies. She knew what it meant. "We name you Pack Mother," Kale said. "Not by blood, but by bond. Where you go, we follow in spirit. What you protect, we protect. Your enemies are our enemies. This is our oath, and it does not end." Tears rolled down Una's cheeks. She did not try to hide them. "Thank you," she whispered. "All of you. Thank you." The Cubs pressed closer, wrapping their arms around her. Other young Velhari broke from the crowd to join them, surrounding Una in a mass of warm fur and small bodies and wagging tails. The adults watched. Some of them smiled. Some of them had wet eyes too, though they would never admit it. Ron looked at Vesa. "The humans," he said quietly. "I think I understand them now." Vesa nodded. "Yes, I believe you do." An hour later, Una stood on the landing pad, watching her transport prepare for departure. The wind had picked up, blowing snow across the frozen ground. The cold bit at her exposed skin. Kale, Suri, and Torn stood with her. They would not leave until the very last moment. "Will you come back?" Suri asked. "Someday," Una said. "When I can. I promise." "We will be warriors by then," Torn said. "Real warriors. The kind you taught us to be." "You already are," Una said. "You always were." The transport's engines hummed to life. It was time. Una hugged each of them one last time. She felt their hearts beating against hers. She memorized the feeling, knowing she would need it in the cold nights ahead. Then she walked up the ramp and into the ship dock as the transport lifted off. She pressed her hand against the window. Below, 3 small figures stood in the snow, watching her rise into the sky. They did not move until she was gone, until the ship was just a speck against the stars. Then Kale turned to the others. "Come on," he said. "We have training to do." They walked back into the mountain together. Behind them, the wind erased their footprints, but what Una had planted would never be erased. It would grow and spread, pass from cub to cub, generation to generation. A seed of compassion in a warrior culture. A reminder that the strongest thing in the universe was not claws or teeth or weapons. It was love.